based on the method of Bala Sulam, who did the commentary on the book of Zohar, did the commentary on the Ari's Tree of Life. So all of that. And then how do we look at the world we're in now, which is it's not a spiritual world for us anyway. It's a corporeal world. I mean, of course, we're in a field of endless white light, but it doesn't feel that way. And from this method of the wisdom of Kabbalah, we deal with where we are, what we can measure, what we can feel. And from there, we move. We don't only say we're in a field of light and that's it. No, we're also in a field of light. And also there's a million Uyghurs in a detention center in China somewhere. And there's also let's just get right into this first item here. There's a lot of weapons that continue to be built. So during the last 2 years, while business is closed, let's just take the last year, 2021, while business is closed, while people sat at home, not going to work or not going to school because they were doing remote school, hiding from COVID, while hospitals around the world filled with patients, while you walked into the grocery store in suburban New Jersey and couldn't get any toilet paper.
Yeah.
While all of that was going on, countries, and especially the most wealthy countries, found billions and billions of dollars to spend on their nuclear arsenals, on weapons of mass destruction. Global military spending topped $1 trillion.
So you're saying you're not surprised? That's what you mean? You're not surprised? That's what you meant?
I was a little surprised, actually. I mean, I'm not surprised because what else are these guys going to do?
By the way, it's not just bombs and airplanes and missiles, and this is becoming freaky if you look at what's going on in terms of where warfare is going, all of the biotech stuff and nanotech stuff. I'm not an expert on that, but
just freak us out a little bit.
Even a couple of years ago, when I spoke to there was a university professor that I knew, I still know, and he's an expert in psychological warfare. In any case, he knows stuff in terms of what's happening in the world in terms of the real arms race. Like, there's what we see and hear in the headlines, and there's the stuff that those who know how to read between the lines see. And then today, it's already not even as hidden. You can see that China, for instance, is working on biologically enhanced soldiers, on brain control methods, on all kinds of weird, horrifying things that have to do with bio warfare.
Some of it is simple.
It's really scary.
I mean, you could start with just saying just breed the strongest and smartest woman with the strongest and smartest man, but then you can go so many layers deep by all of the new technology. You can get in there and you can start modifying genes and brains.
Yeah. This is real stuff. They're looking at CRISPR, gene editing, things like that.
CRISPR, CRISPR, the gene, the cutting the DNA.
Yeah, cutting edge acronym, gene editing technology. They're looking into that and how to use that for warfare, meaning to use that technology to build, how do you say it? Build, modify, create super soldiers.
That probably means that they're not the only ones too. I mean, if you know about it, that means every other country knows about it, and they don't want to get behind.
Yeah. In any case, look, I'm no expert on that. Maybe we should bring an expert on that, just to be amazed by the stuff that goes under the hood. But it's really, really scary when you put all that picture together. On the other hand, I have to say, like you said, everyone, it's so easy to destroy the world today. That's what I'm it's like, do you really even need all of that sophistication, all of that highly technological cyber warfare, bio warfare, nanotech warfare, whatever it is? Do you really even need that? You can just hit a button. There's nukes all over the world today. I don't know in how many places, but that's growing too. It's so easy. to destroy everything and kill everyone. It's just easy. It's just, you know,
Kind of already
it's
doing that
hard not
anyways.
to do it. Yeah.
Uh,
It's fascinating that we keep ourselves from doing it still. There's these how do you call that scientist, midnight clock or something? There's a thing where there are some scientists who are looking at they use a metaphor, the metaphor of a clock that goes to midnight, and they try to show. Maybe you can find something on this, Chris, and show us. There's a thing where scientists are trying to reflect the state of the world and its proximity to total destruction through this kind of clock that goes to midnight. There's
What?
this
You mean the
thing,
doomsday clock?
Doomsday clock, maybe that's how they call it.
Like
Anyway,
like they're counting until complete destruction? They're just guessing all the time?
they're they're using that to represent the precarious state of the world
Yeah,
in
I think it's the
in
doomsday.
in saying we're very close to midnight. Like we're every time there's like you hear about some more more military spending or more trials in creating tests in creating super soldiers that China is doing, things like that. They sort of calculate the risk and say we're almost there. We're almost at midnight. We're almost at the
there,
point where
there's so
we're
many
going to
layers.
destroy each other.
There's so
Yeah.
many layers to this. I had to go to the passport agency a few months ago. The guy who actually helped me was a very nice guy, really patient guy. But I had to go onto like an antiquated website to make an appointment. And then when I got there, I had to wait in a line that was wrapped around the building. And then when they let me in the building, I had to sit in a waiting area for maybe 2.5 hours. And it was like an airport waiting room, but of course not full. And there must have been 30 windows that I guess in the 1980s, early 90s, when 2000s maybe, they were all filled with people, passport agency in New York City. Now, there was like 3 opened out of like 30.
Mm.
So inefficient. Also, when I went to the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, to get my license renewed, also during COVID, the person who helped me was also really, really nice. The person who actually helped me. But the process, again, I had to go online and get an appointment. Again, I had to wait online. The only places I've had to wait online outside around the building have been government buildings. I had to wait online outside around the building. They called my number. They let me in, and then you wait on another line there. You fill out the paper. If you fill out any field wrong, you have to go back to the line, and do that whole kind of thing again. Governments are not super efficient at managing money, managing big budgets. Like if you had to run a business, you wouldn't do it
Right.
like that because there's way too much waste. You have all these customers waiting, just help the customers, get them through the door. So,
Well, I don't think that governments are efficient also in legislating laws, but let's put that aside for a second.
agree. So, it's really interesting. We're into save, you see, save the trees and cut back carbon emissions and all that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, there's hundreds of billions of dollars going into this weapon industry.
Right.
That is like money just going into this giant machine, and we're not really paying attention to it. We were paying a lot of attention to stopping carbon emissions, but there's an insane 60% of the US's budget's going into the military. Where is that money going? Nobody knows where it's going. What's happening about it? No one's in the streets talking about it. No one's writing about it in the newspaper. I say no one. Some people are. Almost no one.
You know what I just thought about? When you made this comparison with like the efficiency of governments or the inefficiency of governments, I just thought about how the army, the military, is really probably can you call that governmental? Anyway, it's not
Of course it
exactly
is.
government. Yes, but like it's very different from how the military, on the other hand,
The president is the commander in chief of the
is
military.
of course, but that's in the US. In other countries there's different structures, but it's still, of course, they're intertwined. But what I'm saying is the military still works in terms of its workflows and internal organization and how it works it's a different animal. It's like it's a different animal than
Like super
than
organized, you
just
mean?
the politicians. Yes, and that's what's interesting when it comes to war. When it comes to uh, thinking about destroying our enemies or defending ourselves and all that, we become suddenly a lot more efficient than when it's like solving the problems of the citizens. I mean, if you think about it, your microwave, your GPS and your phone, all those things, all those inventions, they all started in the military. A lot of the stuff that we're using today, in tech, came from there, and it's
The internet.
compared to the
Yeah.
government, the internet too. No, the internet came from scientists.
Yeah,
It
but
was
the
used
but
But
by.
oh, I should say dark web. I should say dark web. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That came from the
but
military. That makes sense. It makes sense.
They released it
Anyway,
because it's less secret if it's in the open. But yeah, okay,
anyway,
doesn't matter.
forget the details. The point is, governments are so inefficient, and the job of the government is to make the lives of the citizens better and solve their problems. The job of the military, broad strokes, is to defend from enemies or attack enemies. And we're so much better at being efficient when it comes to uh, that.
It's
there's
so
something
clear
to
though. The
say.
goal, this goal is so clear. We defend, and here when you're saying help the citizens, it's like every other citizen has his own idea about what help means. That's starting to make sense too a little bit.
There's something that, and now you're saying it, this concept of panim va'achor, like the face, the front of the creator and the back of the creator, and how the back is always revealed first. It's like the majority of the resources, 60% of the budget, and it's focused and it's all towards like killing, but it organizes the people towards a goal that we all need to
Yeah,
get behind. It's like the backside of if it could then go out and organize
right.
it. But anyway, let's not get so spiritually scientific yet. First of all, what just let's keep our feet on the ground for another few minutes if you'll entertain me here. What are we gonna do with these stockpiles of bombs? Because year after year we're making more. Why do we keep making more? Like how many nukes does it take to kill everyone on Earth? Say it takes, I don't know, maybe 500, 300. Let's just pick a number. I don't know.
Because there's new and exciting ways for us to kill each
Let's
other and destroy each other, Seth.
okay, let's err on the side of caution and say it takes 1,000 nukes to kill the whole world. Everyone, to wipe them out, right? So there's more than that. So what
You're
are
like,
we what
what's the point?
what do we keep doing with more weapons?
Well,
And do you just leave them in the closet? Like if you have the latest and greatest clothes in your closet, you just leave them there?
no, I think that's the thing. Latest and greatest. You just said it. I think that it's an arms race, right? It's a competition on who has the most destructive power, who has the most feared arsenal, who has the latest and greatest and newest and most destructive and most efficient bomb that will kill the enemy, in the most efficient way that will eradicate the planet on the way. You know what I mean? That like that's what
So is there any hope that these guys are
there's
going to back away from the edge? Because if they keep moving towards who's got the better, is there any hope that they're going to back away from the edge? And at what point does one of them, I don't know, maybe his mom didn't hug him enough. I don't know. He could just have a lot of trauma. He could be very insecure. I think maybe he just needs to, maybe he's very powerful. He needs to show everyone he's the strongest and he wants to leave his mark.
you're talking about like a leader, like as an
Yeah, leader,
example. Like,
sure.
I would say we're in a collective thing here. This is the
Maybe,
influence
maybe we can
of
all say we didn't feel enough love. We all didn't feel enough care. We all
that.
feel insecure.
That's probably true as well. But I would say that there is there's a club, there's like a society, people are, we are social creatures. And even when it comes to the arms race, I'm sure it is very much influenced by that. What do I mean here? This is, so if you're an NBA player, your peers are the NBA players, and you want to be the best. You want to be the MVP. You want to slam dunk. You want to win. If you're a politician, definitely you want to win. You want to get the votes, et cetera, et cetera. If you're in charge of the defense for, the defense array for a certain country, you want to be better than the other minister in the other country, and so on and so forth. That's where we're going. And ultimately, the thing that we're missing, if we can start weaving in some Kabbalistic insights here, then the human ego that drives this endless race itself is developing. That is the natural aspect of the evolutionary process here that we're not noticing. But the ego of the person who lives today in the 21st century, doesn't matter who it is, the leader, the military general, the the street cleaner, whoever it is, they all have a greater, more developed, more sophisticated ego than the person who lived 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. That's, again, and I'm saying more sophisticated, more sensitive, more demanding. It's
Can you
not
just
to say
define?
that
Hold on, hold on. Just
Yeah.
help me, because just define when you say it's a more sophisticated ego. I'm a regular guy. I work
Right.
at the grocery store stuffing bags, right? I try and be
Sure.
nice. Of course, I have
Right.
weird thoughts about all different things, violence, sex, whatever. But I'm just but
Mhm.
normally I'm a regular, pretty good person. What do you
But you're
mean that I
still
have a more sophisticated ego? Can you explain what you
you're
mean by
part.
that?
Yes, that's a very important thing to get into. The you're still part of a collective species. We're all interconnected. We're a global collective species. And our
Weren't people always a
collective,
global collective species? Weren't people global
sure,
collective
yes,
species 1,000 years ago also?
yes, of course. Today it's only becoming more apparent and more visible and more technologically evident and so on. Internet, the information age, communication revolution, and so on. Of course, but from nature's perspective, we're always a collective organism. The thing is, how's it relevant to the ego? The ego is developing, the collective human ego is developing, and it's growing, and it's intensifying. And that's why, even if you at the moment play a role where you would say, what do you want? I'm working in a supermarket. What's the, why I'm not a, okay, so you're not in a position to exercise your ego towards other people in a way that has global ramifications directly, like the general in the military has, or the president has. But you're still exhibiting, and you're still having, and you're still carrying the same collective ego of humanity, of your age, of your time.
So hold on,
That's
hold on.
that's
I
that's
need to
what's
understand.
happening.
I need to understand this better. So you're talking about some network between all human creatures, then all of
Exactly.
humanity. So can you
Yes.
open that up a little more? Because I'm talking about this march towards World War III, and you're bringing up this concept that, I'm talking about these leaders, and you're saying every person.
Yes.
First of all, you said has a more something kind of ego. You said a more sophisticated ego, but now you're saying
Yeah.
something else. You're saying that
Yeah.
they're all tied.
It's the same thing. It's the mirror. It's the other side of the same coin. Humanity is gradually becoming two things more than it was before: more interconnected, more interdependent, and more egoistic towards each other. Meaning, we are more sophisticated in how we exploit each other. We are more advanced in how we try to connect to each other to derive benefit. That these two opposite trends growing global interdependence, growing collective egoism. This is what sits at the root of all of the turbulence and the crises that we experience today.
Well, so then what is
And
that?
that's it. Natural processes, natural trends. What were you saying, Chris?
I just don't get what that has to do with World War III. I get that if someone's more egoistic,
I'll tell you.
then
I'll tell you where what it has to do with World War III. Because we are driven by this collectively growing human ego. Even though we are seeing that we're gonna go down, we can see in our eyes that we're going in a downward spiral. It's not just with the arms race. What about climate change? Same thing, right? What our scientists today are saying, thousands of scientists, we are doomed. This is not going in a good place. And we still can't stop. Why? Because what's driving us is a force greater than ourselves. Kabbalists have a very metaphorical description of it. They say the ego, it's almost like the ego comes to you with a drawn sword. It's going to hit you, and it has a drop of poison on the sword, and it tells you open your mouth, and you know what it's going to do. It's going to kill you, but you still just want that drop because it might be tasty, it might be good, it might be that one more drop that will bring you, that will give the ego a certain satisfaction.
it
Let
blinds
me
you.
give you a let me give an illustration of this example.
You take it, you swallow it, and you die. Ultimately,
Yeah.
that's what the parable says, right?
It's like it's old fat.
Yeah.
It's old-fashioned language, but to make it real clear to everyone, imagine you can control someone, right? You have like some knob, and you tell this person to, I don't know, what would be something disturbing but not too disturbing. I don't know, to hurt somebody, punch someone in the face, right? No way, I would never do that, right? And now you're like, okay, I'll give him $500,000. He's like, no, I would never do that. And you're like, $1 million. He's like, no, I would never do that. Like, $5 million. Well, maybe. You're like, $10 million. Like, bam, he's punching. Like that's what that drop is. It's like
Exactly right.
The ego
Yes.
only has so much, and it's not our fault. It's how we're created. But he only has so much he can tolerate until he breaks, until he needs to receive. And this, but what I'm really interested, so we got that. But what I'm really and by the way, many methods, not the wisdom of Kabbalah, but many methods deal with just how to just turn the ego down as much as possible. What we've
Yes,
discovered.
of course. From religions to Eastern teachings to New Age philosophies,
Yeah,
there's a lot of recognition of the ego. The question is, what do you do with it? And can you really directly try to like push it, repress it, or ignore it, or yeah.
That might have even saved us for a long time from destroying ourselves, in the past.
I would agree with that.
That's
I think that
what a good point. What a good point that in the past, by religions and methods having people calm down, you could manage populations that way. However, then the reason why this method, this wisdom of Kabbalah is now being revealed, the reason why the Zohar became revealed again, the reason why Bala Sulam, the Ari, and then the Baal Shem Tov and Bala Sulam has been able to open this up now, is because precisely now, when this ego is growing so much, it turns out that the ego is the only thing the creator created. It turns out that the ego is the only matter in all of creation. It turns out we can't make it go away. It turns out, in fact, the way to receive endless fulfillment is to have the biggest possible one. However, third time we're saying it in the show now, must be something about it. It's this achor and panim. It's this front and back. It's like, what did you say before about it? You said...
about the drop of poison on the
no,
sword.
you're talking about the government.
Sword?
The government, like everything becomes organized,
the military.
and everything becomes
yeah.
when you have the goal. So it's that same thing. We realize that this ego is not going away. Everyone is getting to that point now where the thing is just turned up. These people cannot walk away from the guns and our consumption and just racing towards the cliff.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's like, we're going there. What can we do? It's like, well, what can I do?
Wait, so what is the
Louis
cliff though? It's
C.K.
like
has this great bit about the oil. It's just oil,
that's what
Anyway,
that's exactly
Louis
the
C.K.
question.
yeah.
What is this? Like, what is it actually? Okay, so World War III. I'm just imagining in my head. Okay, these people have resources. In the end, it's going to be boiled down to resources, and then we're saying the ego is going to say, no, that belongs to me. I need to have the more sophisticated technology in order to take that from you, in order for you not to take it from me. What's actually leading us here to World War III? I get that we have more sophisticated technology, like the UAVs in the air. Now you have like UAV submarines, and unmanned submarines. But the technology is just blooming and everything's so cool. But how is someone going to use that in the
well,
end?
I would say, first of all, I don't think we are singular and weird by saying that the world is moving towards a world war. A lot of experts, a lot of analysts, having no knowledge of Kabbalah or Kabbalistic insights, are seeing this picture. From a Kabbalistic perspective, we do know this. We are going towards a dead end, an evolutionary turning point that must happen. Why? Because those two trends we talked about, they are taking
Which two
us
trends?
to interdependence that's growing exponentially, inevitably, relentlessly, and egoism that's growing inevitably, exponentially, every day. These two are what's in conflict in the evolution of humanity, and the climax of the tension between those two opposing trends is going to require a completely new state of mind, a completely new kind of consciousness, because interdependence is not going anywhere. Look at the history of humanity from the dawn of history to today. It's only becoming, even if you don't take Kabbalistic insights into consideration, just look at the history. We're becoming increasingly interdependent all over the globe, and you cannot stop that.
Sure. I used to live in my cave, and I just needed to deal with the people in my cave. Then I lived in my town, and I, they had to make roads. Today, if I want food, I have to go to the grocery store, and I get almonds that came from California, and I get fruits that came from New Zealand, and my clothes came from here.
And the whole world is already intricately connected in so many ties that you can't break, because
there's no going back.
The very infrastructure of our existence, of our being. Now, this is all, like Seth said earlier, we were always we talked about this a couple of minutes ago. From nature's perspective, we were always interconnected, but we are discovering it. It's becoming apparent in front of our eyes. That's a whole other perspective.
Right, listen, let's move away from the bombs for a minute. Step back from the bombs. There's some other things.
We've got to propose a solution here. We got to talk about something to solve this, don't we? Okay, go ahead. Where are we going?
Okay. It's part of the same big picture. It's a little bit of a different take. We don't really talk about this topic too much on this show on purpose, because it takes, we have to have a shared language. We would love to talk about it, but it takes a little bit of preparation because we need a shared language. But let's go into it and see how it works out. There's other things that are going on. These same world leaders, that we already discussed that nobody cares about the Uyghurs, who are the million Uyghurs in the Chinese detention camps, right? Nobody cares about them, right? I mean, is anybody protesting about them? I can't tell you how many protests there were about pronouns, but when you sterilize people and you put them in detention, to sterilize 1 million people based on an ethnicity and put them in some kind of, and detain them in a camp for 5, 6, 7 years, nobody really cares about that, right? Torture, sterilization, political indoctrination. So we know we don't really care about that. But you know who does care about it a little bit? In 2021, the UN gave China one condemnation about that. Spent a lot of time on pronouns and other things, but about one UN condemnation about the million people they have in these detainment camps. Also, there's certain countries around the world where if you're gay, you can be executed.
Right, like highly like radical Islamic countries.
Yeah. Well, Iran, for example, you could be executed, hung from a crane in the streets if you're gay. Brutally killed and disposed of by his family because of his sexuality. Well, that's in a family, but also it's illegal. So the UN cares a little bit about that. The UN, well, not, I don't think it was over this
Wait,
issue.
there's a big thing before you brush off. The example Chris just showed is something that happened in a family, but you're talking about
I'm
a
saying,
government
I'm looking at
that
the,
basically will execute you if you are gay.
right. So I'm talking about powerful countries that have policies that we may or may not like, right? So million people in a camp, that you get one strike from the UN. Okay. You have policies such as these, such as hanging gay people. The UN in 2021 gave Iran one strike, one condemnation. There's 5 countries that got one condemnation. It was China, Iran, North Korea, Russia, and Myanmar. Out of 194 countries, each of them got one. And there's one more country that got condemned. They got condemned 14 times. Not one. They don't even.
Oh boy.
They got condemned 14 times.
So that's 14 million Uyghurs in.
So what you'd think that this country is probably responsible. They must be responsible for a lot of bad things happening. This country has to be responsible probably for the virus. This country has to be responsible for wars. This country must be responsible for indoctrinating our children into inciting civil war. This country, they must be. I mean, it's true that the country we're talking about is very small. I think it only has 6 million people. We're talking about Israel, but why? I mean, that is a lot of condemnations. If all the other countries in the world only got 5 combined, and this one little country got 14, I'm wondering if this little country is responsible for all the problems in the world, or something like that. And we on
Tricky
purpose
question.
we on purpose
Nice
haven't really
setup.
talked about it on our show here because it takes some preparation to understand, because of course we're not really talking at all about politics or anything like that. And
I would say that here, okay, we still have a little bit of time. I'm just looking at the viability. The
I
feasibility
feel how your
of
energy changed as I brought up this topic.
No, just because there's politics,
It's a
religion.
big elephant in the room.
It's a big elephant in the room. Politics, let's start breaking it apart. Politics, religion, and culture. All of these have nothing to do with the root cause of what's really going on with the relationship between what we call that grouping of people as they appear to us, as we call them, or a nation, or the Jewish people, or Israel. That relationship between Israel and the rest of the world, or that the Jewish people and the rest of the world, has deep roots that have to do with the very foundational structure of the human network. And all that we see in our world, politics, religion, and culture, that's just manifestations. That's just external branches of a very deeply embedded structure that needs to be understood first if you want to really decipher this picture.
It's
and
hard for
what's
me to
really
understand
going
it, though. I don't even want to listen because I already have like so much hatred towards. I don't want to hear anything about Israel. I already hate them.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying?
Good point. Yeah, sure. And also, but here's the thing. I wouldn't say that that for someone who's hearing us or heard Seth's introduction to this topic, you might hear like, okay, this is going to be something that explains why Israel are good and we shouldn't condemn them, at least not as much. And that's not the point at all. In fact, if you look into Kabbalistic sources that deal with this, with the world's relationship with Israel, you will see that that they justify and give a spiritual explanation and basis for why this phenomenon is happening. And also, again, this if someone got I'm realizing already this is going to be this is a complicated topic. So I'm saying if at least our friends, our listeners who didn't hear us talk about this before, if at least they take like the simplest kind of conclusion from this.
No, I want the deepest. I want the deepest. We're not talking about politics at all. The world is looking at a physical world. The world is looking at countries. The world is looking at politicians. And the world is thinking that solutions are coming from here. The world is seeing corrupt people. The world is seeing maybe they're Jews, maybe they're from Israel, maybe it's Bill Gates, maybe it doesn't matter. The world is seeing a picture with our physical eyes. And the Kabbalists are looking at a world that's spiritual. And what's moving below is a totally different picture. And what we need to be able to do here, what we're trying to do now, what we just jumped off this cliff, we grabbed your hands and we just jumped off a cliff together. We need now to look. Now we're flying through the sky. We need to see it. We talked earlier about Achor and Panim, the backside and the front side. We need to at least get a glimpse of what's going on from the spiritual perspective of this problem.
There is a deeply seated sentiment, a feeling, an unexplainable feeling that a lot of people around the world feel towards this concept of Israel or the concept of the Jewish people. Sometimes it appears in a friendly way. Sometimes people appreciate that group of people or that country. Sometimes, and most of the times, it appears in a negative way, where people express negative sentiments all the way to anti-Semitic attitudes. Kabbalah explains that this is rooted in the structure of the collective soul. The little known story about this group is that it's not a nationality at all. It's not a race at all. It's not a genealogy at all. The group that is called Israel originally, the original Hebrews, the early Jews, they were formed about 4,000 years ago, being people
in Iraq,
in Mesopotamia, ancient Mesopotamia, and they were
modern day
people,
Iraq.
Yes.
By the way, aren't you Iraqi?
Yes, that's half or a third. I think you would say no.
Part.
It's half. It's a half. It's actually a half. I'm
And
half
the other
Iraqi.
part, the other
I
half?
actually even know a few words.
You're Irish. You're Irish on the other half.
Exactly. Yes.
No, what's the other half?
No. The other half is Moroccan.
All right. So you know some Iraqi words?
I think I have it's not exactly half, and I have some other.
Were people in Iraq for 4,000 years, or they wandered around and came back?
My mother lived in Iraq. She was born there before she came to Israel.
Can you give me some words? No, this is interesting. Just what words do you know?
No, that's fine. Not gonna.
Right. Okay, back to space. Back to heaven. Okay, go ahead.
It just sounds like a bunch of people just kind of like got together. It's like everyone kind of like people from around just said, "Hey, let's start a country." That's never happened before. It's kind of a weird concept if you think about it, actually.
Right. So this group of people, I'm saying they're not a race. They're not the children of some one person. That no, they were people from all over the world. That's the first thing that, every, historians will argue with us now. What else? Orthodox Jews will argue with me now, of course. But this is what Kabbalah explains that actually occurred. We're talking about a group of people that began as representatives from all of the different tribes and clans and groups, or so to speak, nations. We didn't have the concept of a nation 4,000 years ago. But if you can imagine, in mostly in the city of ancient Babylon, in that area, that was the cultural center of humanity. I don't know. Think about, like, I don't know,
New York, I guess. Yeah.
Like a sort of a New York, exactly, like sort of a New York of the time. And also, we don't understand. Think about the human population rise. We're talking about a time where there's a few million people in humanity. That's it. It's not even, the billions, the few billions of people that we have today, globally dispersed and everything. we need to understand what we're talking about. Anyway, so there's this place, this cultural center, which, by the way, was the place where, the way we measure time and the way we practice law and a lot of things, infrastructure of human culture, were created back then. So what happened, and we still use them to this day, what happened there was that a group of people from the different tribes and clans and nations and races, whatever you want to call it, in that place got together and tried to do the thing that we need to do today, which is find a way to transform, not to reduce, eradicate, erase, repress the human ego, but transform the shape of the human ego so that we can bring our differences to complement each other. So they created this multicultural group
Check this
based
out.
on an ideology, on a spiritual ideology.
If a generation
yeah.
If a generation is about 50 years, if I take like 3,000 years, hold on, where'd my calculator go? Hold on. If I do 3,000 years divided by, like, say 50 years old, it's like 60 generations. It's like very not, I mean, is that right? Somebody who's good at math, can you, it's like not.
What did you just calculate?
Like
How many
3,000
generations
divided by 50 years. No, it's
Okay.
300. Hold on.
A generation is
30 divided by
usually
5,
years?
6.
How many years is in a generation?
25, I would say.
Well, 60 times 50
Yes.
is three is what? You guess what?
Maybe I'm
60
just looking for. We're looking for some help from the chat here.
So it's not, my grandma is 2 generations ago,
Right.
but we're not talking about so long ago, a few thousand years ago. All humanity, there's people living in different regions, but the climax of civilization was ancient Babylon. They developed the sailboat, they developed writing, they developed agriculture, they developed, what else? The wheel, a lot going on there.
Yeah.
People got together from all in that metropolis. People got together based on this ideal.
Yes.
And that's who these people are that we're talking about.
And the ideal was, to put it simply, call it love thy friend as thyself, call it connection above differences, unity above differences, or unity through diversity, through differences. That's what those people understood. They understood that the fact that we are becoming, what they felt is exactly that dissonance between the trends that we're talking about today. Today, we feel it on a global scale. We're close to feeling it on a global scale. Then most of humanity, the cultural center was in that area. So about 1 million people or something in Babylon, I don't know, you have to look at the historical records, but that's what they felt, that there's a lot of people there, a lot of differences. They're becoming interdependent. They're creating some sort of economic ties between them. Their lives depend on each other, and they begin to fight. They begin to pose threats to each other. And they realized, wait a second, this is a natural process that's happening. Nature is bringing us together and on the other hand, there's a force within each of us that's pushing us away from each other. If we manage to to transform that inner force within us to agree with our interconnection and benefit from it and enjoy it and make a life out of it, we can create a new culture. That's what you can call the school of thought of Abraham.
Okay, hold on a minute.
But there were
Hold on a
some
minute.
people that were
where-
saying, there were some people that said
What-
nope, and there were some people that said okay, right? Not everyone agreed to that.
Exactly. Yes, that's the very root of the conflict between the group, that group that today we call Jews, Israel, and so on. We,
No,
we
hold
don't
on.
even call
No, we're
them.
stopping. We're stopping right there. I'm going to say that anybody who's watching this show right now, anybody who's involved,
Should rewind.
no, anybody who in their heart, in their desire, is trying to figure out how to get towards that unity of mankind, that is that very same Israel from back then. It's the same one, and all of the people who are not are still didn't get there yet, because as we know, they will all know of me from the least to the greatest, and everyone in the world has to come to it together, and there is no difference between big and small. Once we all enter into that spiritual perception, each and every one is completely equal in that circular integral connection. But in the meantime, we are, and those who are here, and you'd get to decide for yourself. And it doesn't matter what country you come from. It doesn't matter what religion you're born from. We're not talking about that. If you are Yashar El is the Hebrew, which is the word Israel. It just means straight to that goal. Then you here are considered Israel. And forget about the country. There is a subconscious
Gene?
what?
Gene?
What?
A gene? Is my microphone too loud?
Did you say gene?
I didn't know what you meant about gene. I think it's a subconscious cognitive dissonance or something about this, that this fight for good, this revelation of godliness, or this revelation of unity, if you want to call it, or this revelation of harmony between all mankind, you're responsible. You, whoever's listening to this right now, that.
But it's not like they don't have conflict.
Israel. What?
I mean, the people of Israel, like you're saying right now, who have this inner push or something, they want to achieve that. It's not like themselves, among themselves, they don't have conflict. So it's not like all of a sudden they all agree. Oh yeah. Okay, yeah, you're fine. I don't actually hate you, or I don't actually disagree with you.
No.
But there's just something that is mutual between them. There just happens to be something else.
On the animal level, we're looking at a country, and we're looking at a United Nations, and we're looking at all these bashes. But the people who want that and are fighting with each other, that the fighting amongst the Israel, instead of those people being the cream of the crop of humanity right now, and working together and uniting together and being an example to all of humanity, right there. I looked over there for a minute at the chat. I'm sure there's people there who all agree that there needs to be harmony on earth, that there needs to be peace. And I'm sure that there's people there who would be fighting with each other if they were given the chance, because even amongst those who desire connection, the ego, remember that Asaf talked about that drop of poison? The ego is so strong in this generation that, yeah, I want peace under my terms. Yeah, I want connection under my terms. So, Asaf, if you can help us unpeel it, because you're talking about the kind of the historical
Sorry for the noise.
the historical origin and where this comes from. But people need to
not just the historical. The complicated thing here. Sorry, I'm just pouring some water. The complicated thing here to express and to learn for people who are not familiar with this Kabbalistic perspective is that you have to understand two axes here. One of them is the historical process. The other is the spiritual one. And and both of them need to be, you need to understand how What's the relationship between them? History is a manifestation of spirituality, of spiritual data. That's where everything comes from. Humanity, all of it is a network. Remember, we said that. The goal of that network is to become consciously aware of its complete, unbounded connection. Every node on this network needs to become completely lit, like a thing on a Christmas tree, whatever, like just think about, like, they say when your brain is in highly creative states, then all of the neurons, a lot of the neurons, from different areas in the brain are lighting up and communicating with each other. So put whatever visual picture that helps you to see that humanity is one network, and its evolutionary purpose is to become completely interconnected consciously. Why? Because through that conscious interconnection, we discover the one force that sustains all of us, a force of complete, unconditional love and bestowal. That's the goal. All of humanity. Kabbalist Bala writes, black, white, or yellow, call yourself Israel, Gentile, doesn't matter what. You are part of that evolutionary purpose. That needs to happen. Now, in order for the whole...
What is it inside of a person? What is the Israel inside of a person? What is the nations of the world inside of a person? Forget about the countries. Forget about what's on the outside.
Yeah, but you started with the United Nations. What do you mean forget about the countries?
No, listen, what's going on this show is we're looking at the world, and then we're flipping around on the other side and seeing where those forces are coming from.
So why does Israel exist? That's what you're saying?
Okay, I'll try to put both of these things together. I probably won't.
You got
see
5, 6 minutes.
little time that we have left.
To do it.
Make it happen.
We have left, but I'll try. There comes a point in human history where humans begin to become consciously aware of their ego and their separation and the need to overcome that. Then representatives from all of humanity recognize that, feel that, and they begin to create a culture and a methodology of how to rise above the ego and transform it in a way that doesn't go away, doesn't disappear, but it's completely positively connected with others. They are a global group. They're a mini model of the whole of mankind. There's no Jews, Israel, or any other kind of nationality at this point. That group, historically speaking, that's the spiritual connection that's formed between them. And again, they're representatives from all of mankind, right? 4,000 years ago. Now, what happens is that they go on their path, developing the methodology, developing their method of unity through differences, and so on. Now, thousands of years later, a lot happens to that group. We're not going to go
including 10 of the tribes going out there. So there's these people are in every nation, every country, everywhere.
Yes, there's. It's
Black,
not by chance.
Yellow, Arab. This.
It's not by chance that they're everywhere and they're going and they're.
I saw somebody wrote the Pashtuns in Afghanistan are probably Jews, and these ones are everywhere. China.
Back
here,
to
everywhere.
the network example. Yeah, like you said. Yeah.
Exactly. They're spreading now through that network. But from that point where they initially detached from the rest of humanity, that's the point where the sentiment and the weird, inexplainable, most of the time anti-Semitic, other times friendly, and especially, that's where the feeling in the collective psyche of humanity was imprinted towards that group. Okay, that's why to this day every person feels that there is something weird, unexplainable, that needs some deeply seated demand, something they feel irrational, an irrational feeling of some relation towards that group, some demand from them, some expectation from them, something. Now, over time, that group itself also lost its spiritual status, lost its methodology, became completely assimilated in other groups and so on. So today, what do you have today? Today, the people you call Jews or Israelis, they're not necessarily, they don't necessarily understand or feel anything of what we're talking about. They're not, you can't call them Jews
spiritually
or spirit in a spiritual sense. You can call maybe a person who grew up in the Netherlands or in the US or in wherever, who has nothing to do in his genealogy with what we call the Jewish people, feeling that tendency towards unity above differences, and they, spiritually speaking, are called Jews. So you see, the terms, the definitions have become confused. Today we're in a confused state. But because we are in this mixed up situation, what happens is that the sentiment didn't go away. The deeply seated demand from that group to complete its role, to complete its spreading of that ability to connect all differences across the network, the need for that still exists in the human network in each and every node. And because today we don't know who to direct it to, how to express it, it comes about, it manifests as some sentiment, mostly negative and most of the time, towards that group that on the outside, we can call them Israel or Jews or something like that. But we don't actually know who and what do we want from them.
No, I know. It's
not
people,
even from them.
I'll tell you. It's all of those people who have the inclination towards unity, towards connection. We demand that they learn how to connect with each other and be the vanguard of humanity, and that they unite above all of their differences. They're black, they're white, they're Arab, they're Jew, they're whatever. I mean, not religion. They're whoever they are. Anyone who has that inclination in their heart to unite, those are the ones we need to count. Those are the ones we're counting on to do it. So join us next week, everyone. We'll be here again on Thursday, 2 p.m.
We're out of time.
Do this. These guys, the guys who have the guys who are making the weapons are not slowing down, and the ones who have the inclination towards unity need to get stronger. We're not going to fight with weapons. We're going to make a mountain of good on top of that. We hope to see you here next time, where we explore this more. We explore what's going on in the world, what we can do about it, and how we can get to that good future together. Thank you guys for joining from the Middle East, Chris and Asaf and everybody who joined us. Big hug. We will see you next time, 2 p.m. Eastern at the Great Transition.
Bringing contentment to him through the love of friends. Let connection begin. For the love of the world to be one with them. To reach a light with no end. Bringing contentment to him through the love of friends. Let correction begin. For the love of the friends, yeah. Lift me up, you the ones I depend on. For the love of the friends, yeah. We in this together, one with no end, yeah. Deliver us from evil, bring us in bestow. The spirit of the metropolis can take control. For the love of the friends, like the sages foresaw. We the nation, one man and one soul. All my friends are warriors, they sacred. Against the evil inclination. Holy dedication, self-examination. One man, one soul, yeah. We the nation of the world to be one with them. To reach the light with no end. Bringing contentment to him through the love of friends. Let connection begin.
No introduction is really needed. You make believe just to see it. But if you feel it, you can be it. Put on the uniform and transform till we become one. Definitely, the length of our days reaches infinity. As a collective. its creatures. This road is very narrow, like in a telephone booth fighting Pharaoh. But with the help of my friends, I'm tag teaming my ego as I sit with the 10. Where the wisdom go, we go. My society is up the like variety, never artificial. This here is all true original. Like men, Ashlag official, demonstrating unifying fundamental.
Fall in love.